SYN flood attack. Now, what is the SYN flood attack? It is a type of denial of service attack which aims to make a server unavailable to legitimate traffic by consuming all available server resources. By repeatedly sending initial connection request SYN packets, the attacker is able to overwhelm all available ports on a targeted server machine, so causing the targeted device to respond to a legitimate traffic sluggishly or not at all. So it used the TCP protocol. So how does a SYN flood attack work? SYN flood attacks work by exploiting the handshake process of a TCP connection. Under normal conditions, TCP connection exhibits three distinct processes in order to make a connection. First, the client sends a SYN packet to the server in order to initialize the connection. Then the server responds to that initial packet with a SYN ACK packet in order to acknowledge the communication. Finally, the client returns an ACK or acknowledgement packet to acknowledge the receipt of the packet from the server. After completing the sequence of packet sending and receiving, the TCP connection is open and able to send and receive data. So here you can see that here is the server and here is the client, for example. So here is the client actually. So if you can see that the client will go, this is SYN to the server. The server will respond with SYN ACK, which means synchronization. As you can see, SYN synchronization, ACK acknowledgement. So SYN ACK, and it will respond with ACK. All right. Now, to create a denial of service, an attacker exploits the fact that after an initial SYN packet has been received, the server will respond back with one or more SYN ACK packets and wait for the final step in the handshake. So here you can see this is the target, and here is the bot, and the attacker will control this bot. So you can see that it will spoof SYN packet to this target or to this innocent machine or device, and this will start sending SYN ACK to the server. Okay, so we have the server here, and we don't need to directly go to it by typing SYN ACK, no, or SYN actually. We will not start that. We will spoof a SYN packet, and we will assume that the source IP is coming from this server, but actually it is coming from the bot. So the target here, or the innocent target, will thought that, yeah, I will go with SYN ACK to this server, okay, which will let this server or this machine respond to a different people or different machines, which actually they didn't initialize a connection on the first place. So the attacker sent a high volume of SYN packets to the targeted server, often with the spoofed IP addresses. Spoofed, which means that the source IP address has been changed. The server then responds to each one of the connection requests and leaves an open port ready to receive the response. While the server waits for the final ACK packet, which never arrives, the attacker continues to send more SYN packets. So the arrival of each new SYN packet causes the server to temporarily maintain a new open port connection for a certain length of time, and once all the available ports have been utilized, the server is unable to function normally. So how a SYN flood attack mitigated? So how to protect ourselves from such attacks? Now this is a dangerous attack, by the way, you saw. So the first thing, increasing the backlog queue. Now each operating system on targeted device has a certain number of half-open connections that it will allow. One response to high volumes of SYN packet is to increase the maximum number of possible half-open connections the operating system will allow. Now, in order to successfully increase the maximum backlog, the system must reserve additional memory resources to deal with all the new requests. And if the system doesn't have enough memory to be able to handle the increased backlog queue size, system performance will be negatively impacted, but that still may be better than denial of service, of course. Now, recycling the oldest half-open TCP connection. Now, this is another method. So another mitigating strategy involves overwriting the oldest half-open connection once the backlog has been filled. This strategy requires that the legitimate connections can be fully established in less time than the backlog can be filled with malicious SYN packets. This particular defense fails when the attack volume is increased or if the backlog size is too small to be practical. Syn cookie. Now we have the syn cookies method. This strategy involves the creation of a cookie by the server. In order to avoid the risk of dropping connection when the backlog has been filled, the server responds to each connection request with a syn ACK packet, but then drops the syn request from the backlog, removing the request from memory and leaving the port open and ready to make new connection. If the connection is a legitimate request and a final ACK packet is sent from the client machine back to the server will then reconstruct, with some limitation by the way, the syn backlog queue entry. And while this mitigation effort does lose some information about the TCP connection, it is better than allowing denial of service to occur to legitimate users as a result of attack. So we have the client and the server. So the server will receive the syn, then the server will respond with syn ACK. Now he will drop that from, as you can see, he will drop it from the backlog. So you can see that he will drop the syn request from the backlog, but the server, by the way, he respond with syn ACK. So if he receive ACK, I mean the server, if he receive, as you can see, a final ACK, so the server will reconstruct the connection, but by the way, with some limitation. Well, actually, you can read more about this